Today I wanted to talk about a couple of things that were on my mind about specifically flute playing and head joint alignment and hand positioning. So I just wanted to bring this to you today so that as my students in beginning band and some of the high school students that I've visited in the past, I've noticed it's that the alignment of their head joint to the body is off. So I just wanted to share with you guys a simple way to maintain that the head joint and the body are aligned, because it will improve your tone greatly and improve your intonation greatly if these two things are aligned. So the first thing is you want to make sure that this tone hole right here is perfectly aligned with this first key right here. On flutes in general, this key is the center of the flute. So making sure that this tone hole and this key are perfectly aligned is a great way to tell yourself if your flute is aligned correctly for tone production. So the first way I like to do is that when I put together my flute, I bring it together, the two joints, the head joint and the body, and then if I'm pushing it all the way, I just wait for that soft click that the head joint and the body makes to make sure it's secure. And then I just kind of like take a look down the flute. I call it gun barreling, so that I can see from a bird's eye what this key and this tone hole are doing. So if my head joint happens to be in this direction, I can quickly tell that it's not aligned. So, and vice versa, if it's totally off in the opposite direction, you can also tell if that head joint is not aligned. So you wanna make sure that that tone hole and that key are perfectly aligned in the center. And you're gonna see that once you do that, this tone hole and this key become perfectly aligned. You can see them both clearly. So once you get that done, you're now sort of in the center of the flute and you're ready to kind of set yourself up for the best tone possible that you can make here from the point of contact. Now, another thing I've noticed a lot from some of the young flute players from my band and other bands is that their hand positioning on their instrument is really off and sometimes really wrong. And so hand positioning is something that's very important to flute playing, only because not only does it protect you from injury and from long time repetition, but also helps you develop a clean, solid technique that you're gonna need for playing flute. So the number one thing I normally see is the right hand is very off-centered on these sets of keys. I've seen fingers really far forward with fingers really far back. I've seen hands really in awkward, strange positions when the student plays. So those things are really important for you to remember to try to hold your flute in the best hand position. And a good hand position in the right hand will be able to support the flute on its own with one hand. So making sure that your fingers are very clearly on the keys and that your pinky key, and this is another one that's a big, just like the head joint alignment, another one that I talk a lot about with my students is about how to align the pinky key with the body. And normally when I learned back in 7th grade in beginning band, I was lucky enough to have a flute band director who was a flutist. So we got a lot of really great, wonderful, basic things covered. And she taught us that this pinky key should be sort of be divided by the rod. So you know how we have a little screw here at the end, this rod? How this pinky key should be divided by that rod. And that was the fair space to put the pinky key where it was comfortable for the right hand to sit on the flute. Now, as you become more proficient on your flute, as you become practicing and you get better and better at it, you're gonna find yourself that you're gonna find little turns and twists that you like to keep it at, but within reason of where that pinky key is. For the left hand, it's kind of difficult to put the left hand in any weird position where you won't be able to hold the flute correctly. But for the most part, I tell my students to make a C shape with the hand and just let it comfortably come up into the flute and let it rest inside your fingers like that. So that then you have a point of contact where the base of the finger meets. I happen to have a little sticker on mine because the pressure point of the flute against my hand after hours of practicing becomes painful. So I just found these little stickers at Michael's, and I have a bunch of them. So if any of my kids at school want them, I can get you one, or anyone at the high school, I can get you some. They're really comfortable, they're really kind of padded, and they're kind of foam, so they really make a really nice feeling against the finger, against the hand. So that hand positioning is very important. So once your hand position is in the right place, you'll feel the flute a lot differently. And once you actually put that head joint centered onto the top key, as we talked about earlier, that alignment against the key, a lot of things are going to change. If you were producing a specific tone before that, you're going to find that once you have aligned that head joint, it's going to change. And through slow, careful practice, you're going to find yourself slowly starting to find your tone all over again, because you've now aligned the head joint to a place that's more user-friendly. Not to say that when you pull out or push in, it's going to change. So make sure that throughout your band practice, band rehearsal, wherever you are, that you're checking that head joint against the key to ensure that that's in the right place. Another thing I've noticed a lot from some of my young flute players is that the way they sit to play the instrument, sometimes, of course, in the school of marching ensembles, there's a very rigid kind of body positioning that some of the students have to use for the proper marching technique. So, however, sometimes that alignment of the body is not very counterproductive to the flute playing. So we want to make sure that our body alignment is always in the best setup possible. And by doing so, you want to make sure that your arms are at a place where your left hand and your left shoulders, right and left shoulders, are both very relaxed on the instrument when you're sitting to play. And a lot of times when we come into the band room, you know how everybody sits in that half shell setup? A lot of times the chairs are not really aligned correctly. So what you want to do is that you want to turn your chair ever so slightly, about a couple of degrees. I do mine to the right normally, depending on the angle. And once I got it to an angle, now my face, my head, my body is aligned to look at the music better, so that I'm not in a weird position with my shoulders or my back or my twisting that are going to make it difficult for me to read the music. I find that some of the students are sometimes fighting their bodies to be able to see the music. So you want to make sure that you create that really wonderful setup and alignment for yourself so that you can make the best tone possible. Well, I hope those ideas are helpful to you. We can continue talking about them. Leave me a message on any of the platforms via the Facebook group or the Instagram page, or send me a text, anything you want, and we can continue talking about those things. I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Ciao.